Want to talk about, to start here, a new installment to our lost ground investigation. Of course, over the last several weeks, we've been speaking with our Nate Morabito, who's been looking into a situation up in the high country, if you will. So Nate's joining us right now here in the Live Impact News studio. So Nate, this is regarding all of those landslide maps, which you're hearing now tonight. Advocates for now. These are folks who are saying that these maps save lives, and you're getting an actual example of this.
Right. I mean, if you go back to Helene triggered about 3,000 landslides at least, killed at least 31 people. And this is a situation, we had a lot of rain, the ground was saturated, then more rain came, and the mountains started to slip. And all it takes is a little bit of earth moving, it kind of results in a snowball effect. That seems rare, right, when you look at it, big picture, unprecedented storm, unique setup, results in all these landslides. But the truth is landslides are not really as uncommon as we think they are. I mean, they happen every so many years. They're going to happen. And if there was one or two in a piece of land during Helene or 200 years ago, there's going to be another one at some point down the road. And that's the whole kind of idea behind the science of landslide mapping. You're basically trying to document every evidence of past landslides, including now the Helene landslides, to determine what parts of western North Carolina, which parts of the mountains are safe to build, which parts are risky to build, but with some, geologists and consultants, maybe you can make it safer, and then which areas you just shouldn't live in altogether. And we were able, with the help of several people we've been working on this story with, connect with a family who was ready to buy a piece of property in Chimney Rock. They went under contract in 2021 for the land, and this woman is a former professional historian, and she knew that there were some landslide maps out there. This is Rutherford County. Rutherford County was one of a couple handful of counties that were mapped before Helene. We've been saying most counties to this day in western North Carolina have not been mapped, but there were some that were mapped. Rutherford was one of them. She goes online, she looks at the map, she sees that this property that they want to buy is in the footprint of a landslide. She's like, how serious could that really be? I'm going to pay the several $100s to hire consultants to hopefully reassure me that it's all good. And this consultant says, you cannot build here. This is too dangerous. At some point down the road, this property is going to be a major problem. It was a very difficult thing to hear. They decided to walk away. They forfeited their earnest money. They said, we just can't chance it. They got two little girls. It's not worth the risk, ultimately, they were told. Fast forward to 2024, Helene comes through. It wipes out that property. So imagine, had they built that home there, they would have been in that home that night, that morning, and they obviously think the worst would have happened there. And the whole idea is that there is a push now to get more funding for this program. This funding at one point this program was funded about $500,000 a year. Then lawmakers stopped it in 2011. There were budget cuts, there was opposition from builders and realtors. The program sat unfunded for 8 years. Every year, that's one county that doesn't get mapped. So that's 8 counties before Helene that were prevented from getting mapped because of the funding. The program's reinstated in 2018, and I want you to hear from the lawmaker that was really behind the push to revive this. Chuck McGrady, in 2018, was in a budget chair position to really fight for this program. And here's kind of a little bit of our conversation. Do you wish the legislature had done more back then to keep this program alive?
Sure, but I didn't have the pictures that I have now to persuade my colleagues at the time why this was critically important. But I'm wildly happy that we started back there again. We got the program up and running before we lost everything.
2011, he's a freshman lawmaker. His voice doesn't really carry much weight. He says he tried to push for it back then, but it wasn't really a priority. Fast forward to 2018, he's got much more seniority. He's in a budget chair position. he speaks up, and that allows the program to be reinstated. They get moving on mapping some more counties. But here's the big deal right now. Most counties are still unmapped in western North Carolina. And this is a former Republican who's saying current lawmakers really need to fund this program. They need to fund it appropriately. They need to finish the counties they started. They need to update every county that they had finished because there's new technology. There was Helene that happened. And then they need to actually, step foot onto the ground of these counties that they haven't mapped and map them. Because as we've reported, people were caught off guard by this. They did not know that there was a risk that a landslide would take out their house. And I told you about this family story. Had she not had the background as a historian, she wouldn't have known to look online at these maps. A decision, as she calls it, on a random Tuesday that pretty much saved her family's life. You're going to hear from her tonight at 11. You're going to hear much more from this former state lawmaker, Chuck McGrady, about why it wasn't funded early on, what it means that it was funded when it was in 2018, and then really what his message is to lawmakers moving forward. Again, Helene's now, we're a year and a half past Helene. Mm-hmm. People tend to forget, there's certain storms you're not going to forget about. Katrina, I think Helene. But over generations, you don't really remember as fresh as we do now. And the whole idea of this is so that there's really black and white data to tell people on this date in history, there was a landslide on this property. You should know about it before you build here, before you buy here. If you're comfortable with it, you're comfortable with it, but you should at least know the risk. And a lot of these people who died did not know the risk.
Well, and I remember from your prior reporting and reporting as well from meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees that, when we know where landslides happen, we can tend to see landslides in those same areas over and over again.
Yeah, they're a pattern. It's the science, it's the geology of it. If a landslide happens here, at some point another landslide's probably going to happen in that general vicinity. Mm-hmm. And it could be 10,000 years, right? But the question is, are we willing to risk that? And shouldn't you at least have that information before you move your family into a piece of property? And that's really, I think, the big message in all of this. We talked to a husband whose wife died during a landslide, and he was living in the tiny town of Minneapolis. And in that county, it was not mapped yet. And his name's Jamie Quinn. They never once thought, they never even considered that the mountain would come down on them. They lived high above the river. They thought maybe a flood in a worst case scenario, but never behind their house. And so had they had that information, at least they would have been informed, and then they could have made a decision. He told me, without having that information, it changed his life. It upended his life. And now he wants people to know that the risk exists so others don't fall victim like his wife did.
Yeah, and I think about, too, something that Brittany had mentioned last week, having wrapped up, I believe it was some sort of meteorology conference last week, earlier in the week, and then later she came and was with us for some of the evening newscasts, and she talked about something that actually surprised her, which made my ears perk up. This is a surprise to her, but she said one of the things that folks should really know as far as living in the mountains and the foothills is that flooding, they've learned, is the number one risk, followed by landslides. And I think the reason why this stood out to her, I'm just kind of paraphrasing, is folks kind of see the mountains as a climate haven, and I think Helene kind of dispelled that myth, and people are starting to open their eyes more, but hopefully more will, to know that flooding, landslides, these are real possibilities that can happen even when you're way, way high up.
Yep, totally. And I got to give credit to Brittany, too. She's the one that brought this whole investigation idea to me and said, we really need to look at this because this is underreported. Not enough people know about this. There's a level of government failure at local and state levels that need to be kind of told to the community, and there probably needs to be widespread awareness about this issue. And I've been doing additional research too, Vanessa. Almost half the country is at risk of a landslide. Think about that. Mm-hmm. I would have never known that 3 weeks ago until I really started digging into this. And I know we have viewers from all over the place, right? If you look at the West Coast, but it's not just the West Coast. There's a line up in the Northeast where landslides can be an issue. Puerto Rico. There's all these different places across the country that if the conditions are right, if there's heavy rain over a 24-hour period, there is the chance of landslides. And something that really got me through my research is there was the deadliest landslide ever was in Washington State, the Oso landslide. And I was watching this great documentary our King TV content partner did there in Seattle about all these victims. And in one case, there was a survivor who basically said, I've spent 10 years trying to find somewhere safe. Where did she pick? She picked Asheville, North Carolina, before Helene. So think about that. Like, people, we don't have all the information, and it's our job, it's the government's job, it's meteorologist's job, it's realtor's job. We all need to communicate the risk, not to scare anybody, just to have the information. That's what I would want before I buy a home. Again, it's on me at that point. It's up to me to decide how safe I think something is. We're not trying to take people's property rights away here, right? We're just saying you should at least know what could happen on that property.
Yeah. We mentioned this before we kick things off with our conversation. This is just one update in part series that y'all have been doing. How can folks catch up on your reporting, and do you think you might have any follow-ups even after this one?
Yeah, we're all over the place. Number one, you can find on Instagram, on TikTok, on our YouTube page, WCNC Plus. We have kind of everything on WCNC.com. Just look up Lost Ground and you'll find it on WCNC. I do suspect there's going to be more developments in this, not just in the coming weeks, but over the coming months, because I'm starting to look at a much broader issue nationwide, too, because it really is a national issue, and there's a lot of really smart people working to try and educate, to inform, to collect data, to make it accessible to people. And let's not forget, you just heard Governor Stein say earlier today, we need to fund the budget in North Carolina, which hasn't been funded in the last couple of years. We know the head of the landslide mapping program here in North Carolina is asking for additional money and recurring money. But to get the recurring money, the state needs a budget. And as Chuck McGrady told me, that former lawmaker, he doesn't see the opposition that there used to be. And so he feels like there will be this groundswell of support, especially when you see these stories and you see these images. So I think that once lawmakers get back to business in the short session, to try to nail down a budget if they're able to, there could be more updates there. And we're going to share our reporting with lawmakers too, starting at the top with the governor's office as well. We think that this particular story is quite the example of the other side. The first story looked at the loss of life because there wasn't mapping. You got these kids, there's a little girl playing a harmonica when we're up there in Yancey County where this family built now, and she is alive because the maps as well. So it's kind of this balance, both sides of it. You really feel bad for the people that didn't have the information and the circumstances that just allowed this family to have that information. And they were able to find another property in Yancey County. They hired the same consultant, who, by the way, it's the company of a geologist who used to work for the landslide mapping program for the state until the state cut its funding in 2011. And they said, look, you can build on this property. And guess what? They only had minimal damage, trees down, when Helene happened. So it really could be the difference between life and death. And it's easy to move on, when Helene's far behind us. But people who are living in this and who have lived it already, they don't want others to go through the same thing. And those who've survived because of this, they want others to know about it too, so they can be in the same position and have the tools at their disposal to really make the best decision for their family.
Yeah, really all about safety.
Safety, totally.
Knowledge. Nate, thank you so much. We appreciate your reporting on this. Thanks for stopping by again, as always, to our studio.
Yep, you got it. We'll see you guys at 11.
All right, see ya.